So Ryan's a tuner here. He's been, how long have you been tuning here?
Well, I've been here with Sean for 2.5 years or so now. So, yeah, and then actually tuning with him for about a year now. So,
How did you get into tuning and your background?
so I got into tuning because I was always tinkering with cars. I think everybody starts there. And then when I was at college, I took it a little more seriously and started building motors and building my 135 and stuff like that. And then at that time, Sean actually tuned my 135, so that's how I met him. And then when I was at school, I'd come and sit with him on and off, and he'd show me some stuff, and I kind of shadowed him for a little bit. And like as things progressed and I graduated, I went and started working my aerospace job and worked as a mechanical engineer there. And um, as time progressed, I got more and more serious here with Sean and shadowing Sean, and then that turned into tuning cars for Sean, and then that was 2 days a week tuning cars for Sean, and now here full time. So which has been really cool. So that's kind of how that progressed, and obviously I like my BMWs, so continuing to just tinker and learn, whether it's this car or the 1 Series or anything else that I get to touch and play with.
So how was the transition from being a mechanical engineer to becoming a tuner?
Oh, it's way more fun.
Is it?
It's way more fucking fun.
So, and in what aspect you think is fun?
I mean, I think I told you earlier, you can't. I couldn't leave my my last aerospace job doing a burnout out the driveway, so they didn't like that very much. But here I can. So
You know what? I don't blame you. You guys are having fun over here. So, let's just say somebody wants to get into tuning, what would you tell them? Where should they? Actually, a better question is, where should they start?
I would say, go get a car that like is a car that you have a platform that you ideally care about, something where parts are somewhat reasonably easy to replace, and then get some seat time. Like, the internet is a powerful thing. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's bad stuff out there too. Like, there's a lot of really bad information. And then the last part is, like, if you can find someone who's been in the industry and it can be a mentor to you for that sort of thing, that's the biggest thing, man, because at least that'll keep you like steering straight.
Yeah,
and it helps you to sift through like what the good information is and the bad information is, and then it just comes down to seat time. That's it.
I'll say this about my learning experience so far. It's really cool, especially for somebody that's right now still in school, right? It's really cool to read about all these different techniques and perhaps concepts, let's say on Cobb Axis Tuners, the Atlassian page or whatever.
Yep. There's a ton of info there.
Right, 100%. Really good information that manufacturers put out there. And then it's really cool to go ask somebody that's been doing it 20 plus years and see what they have to say about that. And say, well, actually, in theory it's like that, but in practicality, it's not.
Yeah, 100%.
So, Sean was an electrical engineer, you're a mechanical engineer. You think being an engineer helped you in this field?
I mean, I think it helps you to figure out how to be resourceful. I mean, when you go through school, that's what you have to do. And then when you graduate, you realize that you don't know anything. And then you have to be resourceful again to figure out all these new things. So I think more than anything, that helped me a lot. I think that it brings a sense of, like, at least for me, I've always been, like, methodical with certain things and, like, how I do things and how I change variables and stuff. So having that background, I think, has helped me in just my mindset of how I approach a problem. And mechanically, like, just trying to understand what's actually happening. That's helped me quite a bit. So, yeah, I'd say it has a little bit.
And I'm guessing having a great mentor helped too?
Yeah, that helps. That helps a little bit for sure. For sure. That's part of that cheat code I was telling you guys about. Like, if you can find that, it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say that, like, having somebody that look over what you're doing and then show you the right direction instead of just giving you a runaround will help a lot. Like,
most definitely.
Because when you're starting, you're kind of going in blind, in a way.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
that's the hardest part.
And you don't know, like, you could data log it, but you don't know what that data is telling you. It'll be like having a great mentor will show you exactly what that means, help you figure it out.
Yeah, and also, like, when not to dig too deep, like, it's like, you can have certain things where you could fret over it and beat your head into a wall forever and ever and ever, and it may be something that's really minor or something that shouldn't necessarily be examined too closely at the time, right? Like, at different stages in tuning, you'll look closer and closer into things as you get more and more granular with a car, but, like, especially in the beginning, if you're starting to rough in a car, like, you know, you're not going to start focusing on your PID control for your boost, like, off the rip when you're starting to load the car up to check fueling. Like, you know, like, and if you're over there staring at your PIDs and going, oh, I don't know why my PIDs are like this or like that, you know, and just to have somebody that goes like, you know,
it helps having somebody.
Don't worry too much about that just yet. Like, just focus on this, this, and this, and then once you've done that, then focus on this, this, and this, and like, it can help for sure, especially when you're starting.
The one thing I will say too is, like, from my experience, my little experience on tuning, it's definitely a rabbit hole, because
it's dangerous.
you can see, like, I can see wide scope, and then, for example, the other day when we were tuning my STI behind me, didn't know anything about how Cobb Axis Tuner does like PIDs, essentially.
Yep.
Turbodynamics.
Yep.
So I was like, wow, like, I've never actually seen that table.
Yeah.
Until I was like, that's actually really cool, and they do it a little differently than a traditional, I guess, PID table. But it's just really cool, and you don't really know that, especially at my very base level knowledge, until you actually start looking into things. And you're like, wow, there's so many different things right there.
Every day you learn more. Like, that's the thing, and it's never ending. No matter whether you've been in this for a week, 2 years, or 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, every freaking day you learn something new, and like, it's like every car I touch, it doesn't have to be a BMW, because now it's like I'm touching LS cars, I'm touching, you know, Subarus, I'm touching LT cars, like, I'm touching all these different things, and like,
you're diving into all of them, right?
It's like every time you touch one platform, you learn something new. And what's really cool is when you start touching a bunch of different platforms, you see things on other platforms that give you ideas for your own platform or for a different one. You're like, oh, I've seen this somewhere else. I wonder if the logic structure is kind of like this. And then you tweak stuff, you try new things, and yeah, it's fun. Every single car gets better and better, and it's like.
So now let's get into the BMW stuff.
Oh boy, okay.
No.
Okay.
It's not like that. What's your opinion on the plug-and-play harness that have been out here for Motiv Reflex controller?
So, like, me personally, and I'm sure you can agree with this, I'm not a big fan of them. Like, I like just a standard flying lead from Motiv. It's 6 pins, guys. Six, count them. It's really like the DME is right there. It's not.
It's actually less work.
Pins. Like, I'm colorblind and I can nail that shit. Like, there is zero excuse. Like, you count the freaking pins. They're labeled 1, 2, 3, all the way through 30, whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah. It's actually labeled on the DME side where the pin is. If you're having a hard time, just shine a light in there. You'll find it.
If a colorblind kid can do it, you can too. Like, there's no excuse.
Another thing I'm gonna say is it's actually easier to install the flying lead than actual the plug-and-play harnesses.
Oh yeah, try getting that crank sensor.
Yeah,
how's that?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't get it. It's not that hard, and it's easier to diagnose the flying lead one than the plug-and-play. You don't know we don't know who made that harness.
Well, you just gotta think like points of failure, right?
Yeah.
It's like the only points of failure, assuming the wires are intact and in good shape, is where it pins into the actual
ECU.
The ECU, and also onto the Motiv, and that's it. That's the only.
And I must say another thing though.
Links.
Chris from Motiv does have his own plug-and-play harness, and it doesn't look that bad. It actually looks like.
I haven't gotten to see one yet, so.
I didn't install one per se. I've seen one installed, and it actually looks like it's something I would want to install.
Yeah.
But the flying lead works.
It works, man. It works.
It just works. So let's just say a customer wants to get tuned by you, BMW with Motiv. What sensors would you recommend them to get? Or like it's a mandatory you need to have it.
So if you have port injection and we're controlled by the reflex, definitely I want the pressure sensor on the front of the rail, because we use that to look at differential pressure and adjust injection on those port injectors. So that's super important. And then the other thing too, at least on if you're doing like an auto PI/DI split kind of configuration setup, you really need that to be accurate. I would never run that without it. If you're using the old style conventional way of doing it, you can, but I just don't. I don't like tuning on that if I don't have to anymore. So for sure, the pressure sensor. And then I like having an ethanol content sensor. Like even if you don't run flex fuel, it's nice to know where you're at. So like,
no, that doesn't hurt. You could pump bad E.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just so easy. Even on high horsepower cars, it's nice to set it up as a flex fuel tune, because like then it just
that could save your motor
It can save you.
It could save you. Like if let's just say you go pump batty instead of it being E70 whatever, it's E50 or E40.
Yep.
Even like some gas stations label it, it could be as low as E51.
Yeah.
So you never know what you're pumping.
For sure.
So
And
having that flex fuel sensor might save your ass.
Yeah, for sure, and especially for the guys that are cutting it close to the edge. You know, like
Yeah,
those
the one
guys
that's
that really want to fly close to the sun.
Yeah,
like
the one that's maxed out.
Yeah, those are the ones I worry most about when your E isn't good. So.
All right. Well, since we're talking about the guys who cut it close to the edge,
Okay.
for a max, let's just say I have a Gen 2 M340, 440, whatever the case is, a Gen 2 B58. I want the most I can out of the stock motor. What turbo would you recommend me? A 7275 or a 6870?
I think the 6870 is plenty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can make a 7275 work, no problem. I mean, it'll eat up top. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, of course.
It may take a little more work to get it to leave if you're trying to dig that car.
Okay.
Get it to leave from a launch, so maybe it might require a bit more work there. But I think both are good. I think for that like 1,000 horsepower and below mark, that 6870 is fantastic. I mean, at least that's what I'm running on my car right now. And I'll say this much, at like 38 to 40 pounds of boost, that thing seems like it, dude, it feels like it's just coming into its efficiency band. Like IATs are perfect, like everything is just great, and the turbo's just humming along, and it doesn't take a lot of gate to get there. So it just seems really happy. Anywhere from like 38 to probably 40, 41 pounds of boost. It just loves to be parked in that zone. So if you're on a Gen 1 or a Gen 2, like, and you want to be on the ragged edge, like, I think it's plenty. And it's sized large enough where you're going to have that top end. You're going to have not a ton of heat generation, but you're also going to get that spool up, as good as it will be for a turbo that size. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that 6870 does put that work in.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost like a good turbo for all-around stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's like the cliche thing. Like everybody says, oh, 6870, but it's true. I don't,
No, if it's not broken, don't fix
yeah,
it.
100%.
Yeah,
It's
no,
true.
I don't blame them.
It's pretty solid.
Because
I wouldn't mind trying a 7275 on a stock motor. Like, I'm just saying, turbo smart. Like,
I mean, Turbo Smart said, if you want to send him a 7275, we'll find out about that.
I'll make it launch. Don't you guys worry.
Oh, speaking of launching, so how many? What days are you on right now? Day 3?
We're on day 3 right now.
How's that going?
It's going great. This thing's taking it like a champion.
Uh-huh.
My poor transmission.
Yeah, how's that stage 1 holding up? Like,
Absolutely taking the spanking. So, like, it seems pretty good. Definitely when I put the built motor in here, I will probably give it a little refresh. But she's holding it down for now.
so we are all gonna get a bet going. What's gonna go first? I got my money on axles.
You got axles? What do you got?
What do you got?
Well, you got a new drive shaft.
Yeah.
Ugh, my money's on axles too.
Axles?
Axles.
I think it's transmission.
Yeah, I know.
Just because I've been ruthless, dude. Like Brian over at ATS, he told me, he was like, "Hey, like keep that trans brake just below like where that lockup on that converter is. Go easy on
Give
it.
it that extra cushion.
Let's just say this, like that lockup is like 4,200 stall. I'm at like 4,100.
4150.
4,150.
You said keep it under-
Technically, I'm below it.
Yeah,
right?
he said under lockup. He wasn't specific. 4150 is under 42.
He's gonna kill me.
That's what I was.
He's gonna kill me.
Yeah, I got my money on axles, but if it's not the axles, for sure it's a transmission.
Oh,
Because this thing's
yeah.
being used in
It
abuse.
leaves pretty good. I'm not gonna
For
lie.
stage 1 is living.
Yeah.
I'll give it to ATS. That is a good clutch kit.
Yeah, that end of the driveway comes up pretty fast.
Yeah. So what's up with the brakes?
Don't worry about that.
You sure about that?
we got to work on that.
Aerospace. If you're watching this, send my boy some new brakes.
We got to work on that. I need to put some pads on it or something. but- No, they're
Yeah.
holding it down.
This little heat warped.
I degreased the end of the driveway, so we're feeling a little better now about the braking situation.
You got any more questions for him? Or?
Yeah, I do. So, I know you're a big BMW fan.
Yes.
What is your all-time favorite BMW?
I love my 1 Series, man. You
Yeah.
can't.
He wouldn't sell me that car. I offered him so many times. He wouldn't sell me
You
that
can't
car.
shake me on
It's
my
a shell
car.
right now. It's a roller shell right
It's
now.
not.
He
It's
still
got a
won't
motor
sell
in
it
it,
to me.
okay? Hey, hold up.
Does it run and drive?
Shh.
It's a roller.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about that. But no,
No.
like in reality, I think that 1 Series is such a fun freaking car, man. And there aren't a ton of them on the road. Like when you see a 135 on the road, it's pretty cool.
It's pretty special, right?
It's a cool little car. And I just think that there's nothing more fun than a manual 1 Series with like 800 plus horsepower. Like it is the most fun, sketchy little shitbox you will ever drive in your life. And like that open diff in the back will have you like questioning your life decisions for sure. But it is such a fun car. Like people, like if I had to choose in like someone's like ready, set, go in 3 seconds. I had to choose between this car, the 1 Series. It'd be the 1 Series every single freaking day because it's just more fun to drive.
So since you're picking 1 Series, when are you gonna sell me this car?
Okay.
I mean,
not on this interview.
No. You need a G80 in your life, like.
I do. I need a G80 in my life, but I don't need G80 payments. So I like this one. This one's cheap.
I mean, like, just the day will come. My offer will still be there.
So real quick before we end this, so you would say best bang for buck still to this day, Gen 1, Gen 2 B58 over S58.
I mean, the problem with the S58 is just like the price of entry, right? Like, it's just you can get in cheaper if you get rear wheel drive, but like in my personal opinion, if you're gonna drive it on the street,
You
and
need
you
extra
really want
drive.
to enjoy it. I mean, you don't necessarily need to have it, but it's really fun. Like being able to use every dollar that you spent on your car's horsepower, like on the street, whether it's first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, from a roll, from a dig, it doesn't matter. Dusty road, doesn't matter. So I think the price of entry is like the hard part on the S58 stuff. So yeah, I think like great bang for buck right now is Gen 1 and Gen 2 B58 cars. It can be anything from the 240s, 340s, 440s.
I feel like if it was me, I would definitely go for a 2 Series.
2 Series is cool.
M240i.
I like the look of them, like small coupe, and it's
Yeah, either what you have, F22 or the newer generation.
New ones look sick.
Yeah.
New ones are nice.
I like the new ones. I like the new ones, but like the F chassis is just like.
I like the body lines on that.
Yeah, I like the body on the F chassis,
Yeah.
and it's like it's an older car, so when I cut into it,
You
I
feel
don't
a lot less
I don't feel
guilty.
bad.
Yeah.
But if I go buy a brand new M240i
Yes.
and I go cutting into it, I'm gonna feel.
It
I mean, I won't feel bad the next day, but I'll feel a little bad at the time.
That's why he wants to buy my car.
Yeah, that's why it's already here. She's a little rough around the
do
edges,
all
so
the
I'm
things
like,
that I don't want to do to it.
like I said, you don't want to do it, I'll do it. That's what I'm saying. And you go get a G8, everybody wins.
Everybody's happy.
No, but like that's why I said on the last actually 2 videos ago that the M240i, I mean like the Gen 2 or Gen 1 B50 is the best bang for the buck.
Right, for sure.
A little bit on the Gen 2 side because it is a newer car for people who want to like a better interior, just better
Yeah.
looking around. And it's kind of hard to find these in low mileage, I would say,
Yeah.
because they've been out for a minute
Yeah,
now.
for sure.
So if you don't mind high mileage cars, of course, get the F chassis. But if you want low mileage and something better interior, and just I feel like the newer one does look good. It's just the F chassis has like a sweet spot in my heart. So
Yeah, most definitely.
Gen 2 M240i, I still think it's the best bang for the buck. But of course, you can't beat the price line of this.
Yeah.
It's probably something about the kidney grills, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
On the F Series,
Yeah.
F80, F82, whatever it is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of just right. So.
Yeah. Well, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. Maybe next week we'll have hopefully Daniel or somebody else on here.
Yeah, you gotta get
guys
Daniel
should,
on.
you guys gotta comment down below who we need out here on the next.
You gotta get some of
Daniel
Daniel's
out here.
Daniel's
Yeah, we
analogies.
need Daniel and Rob out here.
You just
yeah.
gotta hit him with a list of analogies. You said ready,
yeah.
set, go.
Daniel, you gotta catch him while he's here.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what it is.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one.
All right.